The Albertine Graben lies in the northern part of the western arm of the East African Rift Valley system. It stretches from Uganda's border with South Sudan in the north to Lake Edward in the south. It is shared with the Democratic Republic of Congo along the western border of Uganda. Within here are various lakes, game parks, rivers and forests. Community livelihoods around here vary from herding, fishing practices and crop farming that extend to the hinterlands. It is here in the Albertine Graben that commercial petroleum resources have been discovered. This is a story of the discovery of oil in Uganda, the story of Uganda's black gold. Crude oil and natural gas are the world's main fossil fuels formed under the Earth's surface in processes that lasted millions of years.
Oil is formed when the organic matter decomposes and turns into kerogen that eventually turns into oil. And this is formed by burial of organic matter, which is from living animals and plants. When these are buried at depth, sufficient depth to generate enough pressure and temperature, then the organic matter changes into hydrocarbons or oil.
As resources, oil and gas have high value and bear great potential that has been known to gain enormous revenues which can transform a country in a well-defined time span. The oil story in Uganda starts with the discovery of seeps around Lake Albert. Evidence of hydrocarbon occurrence, including oil and gas seeps, were again reconfirmed in 1926, documented by government in the Albertine Graben.
This was documented by somebody called E.J. Wayland, and he wrote it in a book called Geology in Uganda. Some work was undertaken during those days, and this included some geological mapping and some shallow drilling in the 1920s and 30s. This work was not successful because there were no commercial reserves of oil that were discovered then.
After the Second World War, there was a change in colonial policy and the oil was relegated. Exploration was not really a priority.
Agreements were entered into between the British government and Anglo-Persian Oil Company to establish a joint venture for petroleum exploration. The project covered exploring and producing oil with plans for an oil pipeline from Lake Albert to Wakiso, near Kampala. Exploration drilling was later conducted in the Albertine Graben and found promising prospects, the famous being the Waki 1 well at Butiaba, which is the first deep well in Uganda drilled in 1938. However, the period between 1940 and 1980 was largely a period of limited activity, and Uganda, till 1962, was controlled by the colonial masters who virtually changed policies and zoned East Africa for agriculture.
Oil being a very sensitive industry, the trend of insecurity that prevailed in the country from during those days, 1971 up to 1985, did not produce a very good conducive environment for exploration. That kind of delayed us to go into serious exploration programs and of course attracting investment into the country.
In 1980s, more meaningful and systematic exploration work started again. And in 1983, with a loan from the World Bank, government was able to undertake aeromagnetic surveys from across the entire Graben, which identified 3 major basins deep enough for oil generation. This was, however, still considered scanty data, which lacked details on the geology, the geophysics, and seismology of Uganda. In 1985, the Petroleum Exploration and Production Act was passed into law, and a petroleum unit was set up within the Geological Survey and Mines Department. However, when President Yoweri Museveni came to power in 1986, he suspended all negotiations for licensing, noting the need for the country to train petroleum experts in order to negotiate agreements that were not injurious to Uganda.
He directed that we formulate a policy along 3 lines, that is A, capacity building, number 2, investment promotion, carry out work and be able to share that work with the people who are investors, and then number 3, to regulate the industry once you have got investors in there.
In 1991, the government established a petroleum exploration and production department to recruit, train and acquire data for promoting Uganda's petroleum potential. The Petroleum Exploration and Production Department was in 1994 invited to promote the Albertine Graben as a potential oil prospect at the American Association of Petroleum Geologists Convention in Denver, Colorado.
This promotion included presenting this information to oil companies, going out to exhibitions around the world, just to tell them that there's an opportunity to find oil and gas with a view to attracting companies to come and invest in Uganda.
Since then, the department has been promoting Uganda's petroleum potential at different fora, including the American Association of Petroleum Geologists and the Society of Exploration Geophysics. These efforts attracted and continue to attract investment in the petroleum sector in the country. While realizing the need for stable exploration efforts and that the Albertine Graben spreads into the eastern part of Democratic Republic of Congo, the governments of Uganda and the then Zaire signed an agreement of cooperation in 1990. It covered issues like the exploration and production of common fields. This agreement has been renewed with the current government of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. It was when government signed a production sharing agreement with Heritage Oil and Gas Limited for exploration rights over Exploration Area 3 in the Semiliki Basin that a breakthrough was made. Subsequently, Heritage Oil and Gas conducted the first ever seismic survey in Uganda in the Semiliki Basin in 1998. The data was noted to be of good quality and the interpretation showed hydrocarbon indicators that the potential of the Albertine Graben couldn't be ignored anymore. Heritage thereafter drilled 3 wells called Churaco wells in the Semiliki Basin between 2002 and 2004. The Commonwealth Secretariat soon after declared support to the efforts of Petroleum Exploration and Development Department to develop model production sharing agreements. The next entrants into the petroleum sector in Uganda were Australian-based Hardman Petroleum Resources and the UK-based Energy Africa in 2001.
These were mainly coming to do the more expensive surveys like seismic surveys and exploration drilling.
Hardman Petroleum Resources made the first commercial discovery in Uganda at Imputa in Hoima district in January 2006.
When this well was drilled, the resources that were discovered were enough to cover the costs that had been incurred to drill the well, and therefore it de-risked the sector. Today, the other operators that we have, the other wells that have been drilled, is as a result of Umputa 1. Had this well not been successful, probably Uganda's oil and gas sector wouldn't have been as it is today.
Efforts to strengthen the sector took place, followed by the development of the regulatory framework meant to provide guidance to the sector. The energy policy of 2002 did not provide for petroleum activities. Therefore, there was need for policy to guide oil and gas operations.
Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development put in place the energy policy, which encompassed the whole energy and mineral sector. The National Oil and Gas Policy was put in place specifically to take into consideration the commercial discoveries which were made in 2006, and also looking at the challenges we had in the 1985 Act, which was more on promotion. We had to make sure that we put a policy which later brought in new laws which were enacted in 2013.
The goal of the policy is to use the country's oil and gas resources to contribute to all achievements of poverty eradication and create lasting value to society. Laid out in 10 objectives that outline actions and strategies, this policy is the guiding document which provides direction concerning development and production of oil resources. The discovery of commercial oil resources in 2006 was a major breakthrough and was considered a time of multiple finds. Tullow Uganda operations bought Hardman resources and acquired exploration rights of Area 2. In 2007, another exploration company, Dominion Uganda Limited, acquired rights of exploration Area 4B in the Lake Edward area. The company acquired seismic data and drilled the first well in the Albertine Graben before relinquishing the acreage in 2013. Another company, China National Offshore Oil Corporation, farmed into the Tullow acreage and acquired a 33.3% interest. The company was given operatorship of the Kingfisher Development Area by government, and it acquired the first production license in Uganda in 2013. The company, together with the partners, have committed to invest $2 billion in the project. In June 2007, East African Community Heads of State recognized the importance of boosting the refining capacity in the region and directed the development of a regional refineries development strategy that was afterwards approved in 2008 by member states. The strategy enables harmonized planning and development of regional refineries to ensure security of supply of products and sustainable utilization of crude oil resources in the region. Uganda's National Oil and Gas Policy and Objective Number 4 provides for promotion of valuable utilization of the country's oil and gas resources. And it also lays down plans to undertake medium and large-scale refining. This is done to meet the requirements of national and regional petroleum products in line with the country's policy of value addition and the optimal production of Uganda's oil and gas resources in cost-effective ways.
When we had discovered about 300 million barrels of oil, it was inconceivable for this country to continue business as usual. As you know, we have been exporting raw products. It was inconceivable for us to continue doing the same. So we agreed right from the start that this resource needs to be added value. So as a policy, in 2008, we agreed that one of the key objectives of that policy would be to promote valuable utilization of the resource. And a key objective strategy to achieve that objective was to promote refinery development. And therefore, we embarked on that process right from the word go. We ensured that we put the right legislation in place to ensure that that is achieved.
In 2012, two oil bills were tabled in Parliament, namely the Petroleum Exploration, Development and Production Bill 2012 and the Petroleum, Refining, Gas Processing and Conversion, Transportation and Storage Bill 2012. The two pieces of legislation were debated and subsequently passed by Parliament. In 2013, they were assented to by the President. While the discovery of oil in Uganda in recent years has been a source of both pride and anxiety for the government and the population, many processes are still required to go to full-scale production. For commercially viable production to be realized, there is need for certain infrastructure to be in place. It is noted that the oil debate in Uganda is mainly driven by ever-rising domestic expectations than actual flow of oil.
The record and history of oil and gas development in Africa is one that doesn't always have very good stories. So there were many people in the country who were worried that Uganda was going to go the same route. We also had a lot of people coming from outside Uganda who came to Uganda to preach those negative things. So anxiety was a problem. Often the ministry had to go out and say, yes, there are some bad examples around the world. But there are also very good examples around the world of how oil has been used.
And vigilance on the part of area operators, the different stakeholders, National Environmental Management Authority, and the ministry's monitoring systems have provided for regulation that has guaranteed a good environment safe from abuse and degradation. An industry like this one has its positive and negative impact. Questions have arisen on possible land alienation as a new trade enters an otherwise stable ecosystem. While many activities here have integrated all kinds of livelihood practices, which range from wildlife-based activities, various businesses, fishing, farm-based practices, among others, oil business tends to overshadow other activities.
The Albertine Graben is one of the very richly gifted areas in terms of biodiversity. So that overlap of oil and gas and biodiversity needs to be managed in an appropriate way. So we need to understand the biodiversity that is overlaying before we plan to extract these resources. I believe we can be able to extract the resources with minimal impacts. There's been a good level of compliance, relatively good level of compliance to the required environmental requirements. And this has been mainly through our regular compliance inspections. So generally, we believe the actors are taking measures to minimize impacts on the environment.
All the projects that have so far been undertaken and the projects that we envisage to be undertaken have been subjected to environmental impact assessments, and those that will come will also be subject to environmental impact assessments so that we identify impacts early enough and plan mitigations where in place.
New industries introduce new measures that can bear many risks. Assurances have been made that improved technological innovations in the sector address concerns like the disturbances caused to the wildlife, disrupting the ecological stability and the livelihood activities in the areas.
Environment is a very critical aspect, especially with regard to where Uganda's petroleum has been found. The discoveries have been made in very sensitive areas in terms of ecosystems, and these sensitive areas need to be protected. This was recognized in the policy of 2008, Objective 9, which clearly stipulates that the environment needs to be protected, environment and biodiversity need to be protected and safeguarded. In that regard, we have put a number of interventions. One, we completed the sensitivity atlas, which clearly maps the sensitive areas in the Albertine Graben. We have completed the strategic environment assessment, which at a high level directs government on what needs to be put in place in terms of planning, policies, and so on. Now we are working on updating the legal and regulatory framework with NEMA and other stakeholder institutions so that the oil and gas sector are taken care of at high level.
Adding to this have been corporate social responsibility measures geared towards addressing community needs with support to schools, health and education needs. Continuous stakeholder engagement has included the interests of all from the cultural leadership, the communities and the area operators.
Apparently there is no any bad relationship between the institution of the kingdom, the oil companies and government. We are all working together. And all workshops that have been conducted, the kingdom as an institution has always been brought on board. Yes. And I'm happy the oil companies have also reciprocated. The other day, SNOC awarded, that was last year, awarded gifts or prizes to pupils of primary schools and O-level who did well, senior 4 exams and P7.
While cultural demands have been wide-ranging, approaches have been instituted at all levels that focus on inclusion, taking into account all concerns. This shared commitment from every stakeholder ensures a coexistence between oil and gas activities on one side and stakeholder interests on the other. This has diminished any likelihood of local or regional conflicts. While previously known threats have included military scuffles that have in the past occurred near Lake Albert at the common border with the Democratic Republic of Congo, engagement between the two countries at the highest level has made such threats unlikely.
Our border on the Albertine grabbing is porous. People are entering freely in and out, but government is really now taking care of that challenge. Ministry of Internal Affairs deployed a motorboat to manage the security of that area. And the immigration is working hand in hand with the police. Marine police is working hand in hand with the UPDF, is working hand in hand with the internal security organization. So all security agencies, including immigration, are working hand in hand.
Initially, managing stakeholder expectation and public anxiety in general posed a big challenge to the sector. In order to manage these, the department developed a national communication strategy for the oil and gas sector. The implementation of this strategy has gone a long way in addressing the ever-emerging information needs from the general public. While all information may not be placed in the public domain, information is shared across a broad spectrum of stakeholders to deter unrealistic expectations and some accusations that arise regularly.
We realized early on that this sector is technical in nature, and so before you even share information with people, there is need to build their capacity so that they are able to understand what exactly the oil and gas industry is. They understand the technical terms so that they can comment and maybe write on the sector from an informed point of view. So we have undertaken specific capacity building for the media. We hold quarterly breakfast meetings, workshops with the journalists, the editors, the sub-editors, the radio and television talk show hosts. We also take them on field visits. So we've taken a number of media groups to the Albertine Graben, and not only media groups, but also other stakeholders, civil society, the members of parliament. We've also taken district leaders from districts where the operations are going on. We've also taken other government staff from different government agencies and departments to enable them appreciate the operations that are going on in the field.
This has combated mistrust and suspicion while also enhancing a level of transparency and accountability. Exaggerated and inaccurate expectations have been noted to arise largely where significant information distortions take place. And the strengthening of the department with the communications section that is spearheading the implementation of the communication strategy has gone a long way to address the need for consistent, accurate and timely information, which has improved the general view about the sector. It has also ensured that all Ugandans have access to information about oil and gas. The benefit here is that it has significantly changed the way people think, perceive and believe issues regarding this sector.
The level of appreciation of the fact that we have not yet produced is also very low. People know that we discovered the oil. They don't understand why they are not getting the money. They don't understand why things are not taking place so quickly. Whereas we have oil and gas, there are quite a number of other activities that are supposed to take place even before we produce this oil. But I believe by the time we finish field development, I'm sure our communities will be ready. They will be adequately prepared and they will be understanding as to why, for instance, it took quite some time to first prepare, to develop the resource and then produce it.
While it is sometimes assumed that oil can cause the resource scarce or have impact on the fiscal situation by instigating the Dutch disease, government continues to restate the commitment to extracting as much benefit from the oil and gas sector while using the resources to support other sectors. This does not mean other sectors are undermined, but are complemented in the contribution to gross domestic product. 116 wells have been drilled from the year 2002 to date, and more are planned. Many of these have shown good promise.
In accordance with the national oil and gas policy, we will continue with the exploration of the remaining area. So with the remaining area, we are again going to acquire data so that we can again prepare blocks so that we can continuously have bidding grounds. And once we have bidding grounds and exploration is done, the petroleum is discovered, we move into production. When it is produced, we refine some of it we sell it to the international market, and then whatever we get out of it, we plow it back into the various sectors.
Oil is a finite resource, but using its revenue to generate financial resources, domestic capacities, and also enhance human abilities in Uganda will help of an endless stream of benefits. This also calls for inclusion and understanding. The resource has potential to transform infrastructure like roads, rail and energy, human resource development like education, health, scientific research and industrialization, and support other human aspirations, thereby improving the overall life of Ugandans. It can sustain economic diversification and enhance the non-oil sectors. This will increase the overall wealth of Uganda's society even after the resource is depleted.
We are looking at the roads, we are looking at electricity, we are looking at schools, we are looking at hospitals, we are looking at water systems, we are looking at modernization of agriculture, because Uganda, as you know, is an agricultural country. And so if we can convert this black gold into green gold, then we will have transformed our country.